Hello, everyone, and welcome to our February Early Childhood Seminar with Dr. Rebecca. We are so excited to be here today as she is going to talk about assessment. And assessment isn't something that we've talked a lot about during this seminar, so we're so excited to have her. And she's also going to be back to present for us in August at our Early Childhood Conference, so don't miss that one either. Dr. Hill?
Rebecca Reynolds has many different wonderful experiences and roles in education that she's going to share with us. She recently worked with Berkeley University of California to align kindergarten assessment in social emotional development and approaches to learning from several different interstate sources. Developing instructional strategies and resources that align with learning is an area that has been forgotten in many school environments. She's also developed teacher training tools to train and assist both special educators and general education classroom teachers to provide meaningful experiences in expeditionary learning. Dr. Rebecca was recently published in ProQuest, EBSCO Host, and others, bringing attention to bias and needed differentiation in our assessment formats as a nation. What a crucial topic right now as we're dealing with several of these issues in education. So we just really want to welcome Dr. Rebecca Reynolds, and the floor is yours.
Hello. I hope everyone's doing well this morning, sorry. Well, let's dive right in. Bias is a passion of mine. I know that statement sounds kind of ridiculous or can sound ridiculous. However, being an educator, I've seen a lot of it, especially when it comes to assessment. Now, in this presentation, we're going to talk about how we can help children learn through bias-free observation and assessment. If I can click over. Whoop. There we go. Now we have some movement. And first thing we're going to go over is a couple of vocabulary words. This will help you throughout the presentation so that you will be able to understand fully what we're talking about. We're going to talk about learning outcomes for you as a participant in this workshop, as well as learning outcomes for the children. We're going to talk about formative and summative assessments, subjective and objective observation, and identifying bias that's recorded in the documentation of observation. Number 6, documenting and avoiding bias in observational assessment. And we're going to do some practice. And then we're going to conclude with a little bit of information from NACI. There we go. And okay, vocabulary defined. Learning outcomes and objectives. We'll be going over. Formative assessments. Can anyone tell me what formative assessments are? Anyone?
Formative are the ones that kind of take place in the midst of the happening, and it's used to help the educator be able to make informed decisions on how they move forward with their learners.
Very good. And what about summative assessments?
Those typically take place after the learning has happened, and they're thought of, as those kind of big assessments. If you're thinking of older children, their final exams or their state testing that they have, and it typically is happening after the learning has already taken place.
So if you're doing a formative assessment, chances are you're making some observations of the children that you're watching, that you're working with at the table. Perhaps you're watching how they're holding the pencil. So you go over and you help them hold their pencil correctly so that they can practice their writing. Summative assessments. After they've completed a topic, You do a formal assessment of them, perhaps a quiz or a test, like you mentioned, for the older children. Now, obviously, we're going to dig deeper into this. Going on down the list, subjective observation and objective observation. In the objective observation, that is literally when you write down what you see and hear, only the facts. Subjective observation is when you include your opinions and assessments within the observation. Was there a question? Okay, I thought I heard someone. I just want to make sure there wasn't a question. Advancing equity. Preventing observation in our assessments is advancing equity. It is definitely one of the major goals of NACCE. I wanted to point out that Jean Piaget, one of the child development greats, learned by observing his own children. And we will go over a little bit of differentiation. There we go. I'm having some issues with advanced.
I know it's hard to see at the bottom. Can you click your enter key and it'll move?
Enter key. There we go. Thank you. Okay. Learning outcomes for you as the training participant. The first one, if you don't already know these, the first one at the end of this training, you should be able to identify non-biased documentation. You should be able to differentiate and produce internal perspectives of student assessment, and you should be able to reframe and support characteristics of non-biased assessment. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of an activity, identifying non-biased documentation. We have, as documented, Lori cannot cut in a straight line. Is this bias? Yes or no?
No.
What do you think? You don't think this is biased? Okay.
I mean, as an early childhood professional, I would use a checklist, and either she can do it or she can't do it.
That's a good answer. Now, the reason this is marked with a yes is because of the words cannot. Your point is well taken with either she can do it or she can't do it. However, to make this a non-biased statement, saying something more along the lines of how she's holding the scissors, exactly what you see. What you're looking here at the document, under documented number 1, cannot. Can you actually see and hear that she cannot? Hopefully the next ones will let shine some light to this. Number 2, Lori doesn't want to cut. Is this bias?
Dr. Rebecca, can you see the chat? There are people answering in the chat.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know. Yes, this is bias. It assumes that she doesn't want to, because you can't see or hear what somebody wants. Number 3, Lori put her thumb into the scissor hole where the finger belongs and the finger in the hole meant for the thumb. Is this bias? Yes or no? Good. This is objective. This is not a bias statement. Can we see the difference between the three? Number one says cannot. You can't see or hear somebody who cannot. Lori doesn't want. You can't see or hear when somebody doesn't want. But number three, you can see or hear the entire documentation. Lori put her thumb into the scissor hole where the finger belongs and the finger in the hole meant for the thumb. Now, we have, excuse me while I move around chat boxes and whatnot, differentiate and produce internal perspective of student assessment. Now, differentiation is an important thing in assessment. Whenever possible or learning issues are identified, we need to be able to differentiate, delegate, if you want to use that word instead, but we need to be able to identify and change according to the individual child's needs. We can use learning styles to do this, for example. Any special needs that you see a child that could have or as documented in an IEP. Differentiation is important to make sure that the child gets what they need, not only in the curriculum, but also in the documentation of your observation. Now, when we observe, there is a need for internal perspective. Who needs to have differentiation? How can I best use differentiation? Should I consider learning styles while differentiating or only learning needs? So your own personal thoughts do impact your documentation. Here we go. Okay, so let's put some of this into action. Reframe and support characteristics of non-biased assessment. Reasons for bias. Racial differences. Income levels. Personal preferences. Dislike of parents. Students who are slow. Yep. Now, how can we support the children when we have all of these different reasons for bias? Now, mind you, we need to support the children in the curriculum, in differentiation, in the objective and subjective observation. Every learner does need differentiation. Our backgrounds provide a positive classroom environment for them. Hopefully that's true. As teachers, we need to really work at this sometimes. We need to understand that all races are equal, which unfortunately, not just in this country, but in many places, this is a problem. Use income level information to help the children in need. So instead of being biased against the children, you figure out that you have a child in your classroom who's really struggling, but then you notice at lunchtime they're eating like there's no tomorrow. Maybe they don't have breakfast at home. There's many different things we can use observation for. Number 3, learn the personal preferences of children in our classroom. This makes a difference, a big difference. If the children feel comfortable in the classroom with you as their teacher and the classroom as an environment as a whole, the children's performance will show it. Your observations are key to knowing your children's personal preferences, as well as your relationship with each child. Number 4, try to work with parents. There are so many teachers out there that if a parent starts to talk to them, they get flustered. We need to try and remember that we are a team. The children need to see us working together. Number 5, differentiate for each student's needs, even the students that are slow. And many times I notice that when students are marked as slow or known as the slow student, it may not be that they're slow. It may just be their personality type is to be laid back and they learn through their own observations. Now, when we're talking about learning outcomes, when we're assessing children, we can talk about learning goals, learning objectives, and learning outcomes. If you put this together, a learning goal is general. What is intended for participants to learn? For example, a learning goal can be to understand balance by using blocks. Very general goal. Learning objective is more specific and it's measurable. Learning objective specifically what is intended for participants to learn with subject content. For example, the children will build a 4-block tower without the tower falling. Do you see the difference between the generalization of a learning goal and the specifics of the learning objectives? Now, if we put this together for learning outcomes, we have what the participant actually learned. This should be measurable as well. An example could state 10 out of 15 children were able to build 4 blocks tall. Now, learning outcomes and assessing children, differentiation for written objectives in lesson planning. Written with learning goals in mind, Lori will cut in a straight line. Written in a measurement format, Lori will cut in a straight line with at least 80% accuracy. Tasks, conditions, and criteria. I'm sorry, can you clarify? Okay, So formative and summative assessments, we had a little bit of an introduction when I asked if you can define it. Both formative and summative assessments can assist in planning and assessing. Formative assessments provide a snapshot of teaching, learning while they are still happening. It could be guided practice, simple checking for understanding during a lesson, adjusting the instruction on the fly. In other words, adjusting how you instruct the children based on what you're seeing in their behavior or their reactions to the instruction. And it can be a tool to guide your future instruction. Summative examples can include a rubric, an exam, projects, portfolios, evaluations, basically a collection or the end result of learning. And it sounds like you had a grasp on this already. Now, observation as assessment, I believe, is one of the best ways to assess. Obviously, formative assessments, excuse me, are a great way to help with the immediate needs of students. Helping with those immediate needs can also overlap with the long-term assessments. The summative assessments are fantastic for long-term planning and long-term assessment. It gives you documentation to pass on to future teachers so that they have an understanding of where your students left off, so they know where to start from. It's also a fantastic tool to use for things like parent-teacher conferences. Administration can use this information to help create workshops and trainings for their education staff and to help assess the progression of the students in the school. Okay, so I'm going to ask for your participation. Subjective and objective observation. Just the facts is objective observation. Nothing more, just the facts. What you see, what you hear. An example, Kimber put her sweater on her right arm first. Then her left arm got caught in the hole where the head goes into Kimber, then asked the teacher for help. The subjective observation is all opinion and assessment. An example, Kimber showed determination and practice while trying to put her sweater on. She didn't get upset, showing emotional control. Okay. Now, if there's no questions, we're going to move further. Is this subjective or objective? Stephanie loved to hug her dolls. Subjective. Very good. Donnie stayed in the block corner building with little blocks. Subjective or objective? Objective. Oh, block size. You're right. I guess the block size could be subjective. Number 3. Samantha colored out of the lines after the teacher told her it is okay to do so. Objective or subjective? Objective. If we can, let's see if we can move the chat box over. Objective. If we can evaluate the time of the drawing outside of the lines. Objective. Okay. Number 4, Sandra screamed because she wanted to play also. Subjective. 5, Lori stayed quiet and didn't talk to anyone. Objective, observable. Good. Number 6, John likes it when the music was on. Subjective, because what John likes is subjective. That's a good point. If John states that he likes when the music is on, then it's objective. Number 7, Emmanuel played too many video games at home. Subjective. Now here's a little trivia for you. All 7 of these children are the names of my 7 children. Moving on, identifying bias recording of observation. Why watch out for bias? Because it prevents a lot of issues for the children. It also prevents issues for the teachers and for the school as a whole. So to prevent bias, we do need to be able to identify bias. Bias comes in many forms. Racial, stereotyping, exclusion of various groups, isolation from various groups, linguistic bias, cosmetic bias. There are so many more that are listed here. It's amazing to me. But I believe if we can learn how to identify our own internal biases, we can help teach the children to do the same thing, and we can help prevent a lot of heartache for the children down the line. Documenting and avoiding bias and observational assessment. Objective observation and subjective assessments and opinion of what happens. Assessment and opinions of what happens is the subjective. Christy said, my mommy is to get to work. Now, an assessment, an opinion of what happened. Christy, being a child who is learning English as a Spanish-speaking child, does not have a full understanding of English grammar. So, when we're recording our observations as observations, the objective portion, Christy said, me mommy is to get to work. This is what you document as what happened. Then, when you write your assessment and opinion, you can write the reasons why you believe she spoke in this manner. Number 2, Joseph, a 5-year-old boy, while walking upstairs, led with his left foot, then met the left foot with his right foot on the same step until he reached the top of the stairs. Now, if we were to assess, sorry about that. If we were to assess and give our opinion of what happened, this is where we put our subjective information. Joseph needs to be reminded to alternate feet as he climbs. Joseph needs to be given more opportunity to climb and use his feet in a way that he is forced to alternate them. This will impact how his brain continues to develop. Now, if you look at the wheel here, we have a bias-free observation cycle. This is not an easy thing to achieve, but it's necessary to work on. Documenting while observing. Now remember, when we're documenting, only what we see and what we hear. Then we can write our subjective observation, the opinions and assessments. From our opinions and assessments, we can create a plan or change our current plans based on what we believe the children need from our subjective observation. Then we implement our plan that we changed or created, and then we go right back to documenting while observing. And this cycle should continue over and over and over again. Okay, we're going to practice. And let's see if I can get the chat back up. I'm not sure how. Okay, so we're going to practice this. Write down or think about, if you don't have something to write with, only what you see. Do not include any opinion words. Then we're going to talk about opinions and assessments and separating our opinions from what your observation is. When during your observation, write about what did each child learn. Oh, I'm sorry, in your opinions and assessments, write about what did each child learn, what do the children need help with, etc. And then planning, we can write a plan for the child of your observation to help in this child's development and growth based on your assessment of excuse me, based on your assessment of your own observation. I do apologize. I do not see how I can get the chat box back. Maybe, oh, I think yep, I figured it out. Oops. Okay. So take a few seconds and practice this, okay? Take a look at the picture. There's two children in this picture. Based on what you see, and obviously it's not a video, so we can't hear, but that's okay. Based on what you see, what is happening? I did figure out the chat box, so feel free to type something in if you like. Give you a few seconds more. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, so the objective observation. Now, mind you, yours does not need to match perfectly because you could have been looking for things other than what is on the screen in front of you. Oh, we do have a chat coming in. It says, 2 children are seated at the abacus. Child 1 is sliding children playing with one manipulative on the carpet. One child is physically interacting with the toy, the other observes. Good. It is painfully obvious that this child is looking, both of them are looking at it. So those are great. Now, if you had a little bit more information, other than what you see. I'm sure that could help. But as some more examples of objective observation, Jason and Joshua are sitting next to the bead counter. Jason is moving the beads with his fingers. Joshua laughs every time Jason moves a bead from one side to the other. Now, if we were to put our opinions in subjective assessments, would anyone like to share if they had opinions or subjective assessments? The boys are playing nicely. That's good. It's very simple, to the point, and goes right to social emotional development. Cooperative play, perfect. It's not parallel play, and look at how young they are. That's pretty good. We could also say Jason and Joshua like to play together. Jason's fine motor skills are showing improvement. Even though Joshua seems happy, he hasn't said any words or participated in moving the beads. See, it's all a matter of perspective and what you're assessing for. If, for example, we wanted to be aware of Jason's fine motor skills, we might want to put that into our subjective assessment. If we're talking about, or if we're specifically looking for social emotional needs, the boys playing nicely and cooperative play are fantastic for the subjective assessment. Now, conclusion with the application of the NACI equity and ECE. Different assessment formats assist in preventing observational bias. They do assist, but we do need to be very aware of our own biases and how they impact what we record. What we record from children early on have the potential of following them throughout their school life. We don't want another teacher to have a bias against a student based on your interpretations or someone else's interpretations. So if we can focus ourselves well enough to keep our own biases out, we can potentially help these children in their development in quite a dramatic way. Non-biased documentation includes no opinion words or statements in the assessment and the objective observation or objective assessment portion. It will take work to recognize and avoid bias. Our own biases, biases of our co-teachers, biases of our administrators, we need to be aware of it on a constant basis and try to understand other people's perspectives at the same time. This is multitasking to a level like no other. Among all the other wonderful things that teachers are expected to accomplish. Differentiation of activities and assessment is important. And if we can prevent bias from infiltrating our documentation, differentiation will be easier. It will be easier to focus in on what the children need. And don't forget that bias comes from many different forms. It can come from a student's perspective. It can come from a student's parents' perspective. It can come from your own administrator. It can come from yourself and you're not aware of it. How this session fosters equity in ECE. All children have the right to equitable learning opportunities. We need to recognize the power and benefits of diversity and inclusivity. We need to create a caring, equitable community of engaged learners. teachers need to be leaders in this area. We need to acknowledge and seek to understand structural inequities and their impact. Currently, right now, there's so many of them just based on race alone in this country. We really need to work on this. And I firmly believe that it can start with educators. We need to take responsibility for biased actions, even if it's not intended, and actively work to repair any harm. We need to take responsibility. So if we're able to identify something that we wrote down or documented in someone's assessment that came from our own personal bias, we need to come forward and say, oh, wait a minute, I need to correct that. We need to maximize children's learning in the classroom and at home, especially in academic, social, and emotional development. And, you know, right now with the pandemic going on, the social and emotional development of our children, it needs to come first. It's very simple. If children don't feel secure and safe, if they don't feel emotionally intact, they cannot learn the scholastic things that we need them to learn. We need to look towards that. And number 3 of equity, we need to build awareness and understanding of cultural, personal values and biases. We need to uphold fundamental principles of fairness and justice for everyone. Skin color, impairment, learning disabilities, it does not matter. Everyone deserves fairness and justice. We need to embrace each child's unique strengths, work to eliminate structural inequities that limit learning opportunities for both young children and the educators who support them. And we can really make a big difference by starting this with preventing bias in the assessments that we give to the children. Are there any questions? Do we have any questions?
Rebecca, thank you so much. I know assessment is a hard topic to engage people on. It's something that it's just a tough subject. We talked about this yesterday, didn't we? And it's not something that you come and, you know, it's exciting and hands-on. So thank you so much for the engagement back and forth and the participation. We appreciate you so much. Does anybody have anything that they want to jump on and say or add?
I just wanted to add, I currently am teaching our course on special education and ethics. And we do a whole week on over-representation of minorities in special education. And this, I'm going to put this in the course immediately because I think it really, like Tisha was saying, assessment's a hard thing to talk about. It's not like jazzy and exciting. This is something that everyone does. And I think so much of it is that implicit bias that they don't even realize. I mean, even if you're just talking about an observation where you're only recording the facts, that alone would change so much of what happens to our culturally and linguistically diverse students who are referred to special education, who don't need special education, but we as educators are misidentifying their needs. And so thank you.
I'm so glad you'll be able to use this.
Anyone else? Anyone want to come on and share an assessment example or something that you've done before and you've had to go back and maybe change it, or this has showed you something different that you could be doing? This is a time to share on and give examples. Well, you had great participation in the chat box also. And I told her we might have a small group today because of all the weather just everywhere. So I have this recorded And thank you so much for being here. And thank you to the participants that came. We are very thankful for you. And we do this each month. So we hope to see you back in March. And Dr. Rebecca, thank you for your time. I appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you. It was
Have a
fun.
great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.